creepy TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
Check out this very interesting rock formation. Looks a lot like toes with toenails, like
That's
a
right.
petrified giant's foot, possibly. It is honestly so crazy how ignorant people are to our true past, what actually happened throughout our history, the giants, the Nephilim, the fallen angels, all this stuff. The evidence is right in front of our face, always. There's been so many resets throughout our history. It's just so obvious at this point. Like, the giant doors that we find all over the world, why would they build that latch way up there? For who? Clearly, it's for these beings that were depicted throughout all of our ancient history. Look at the toes, these massive doorways, these giant structures, giant trees. You know that pink salt? The Himalayan salt? Himalayan? It's hardened DNA, hardened biology. That's what it is. Like, you're literally consuming the giants. It's actually what it is. These were all massive trees, the faces all over the world. It's just so obvious that we've been lied to about our true history, guys. Now, why would they lie to us about this? Because they want you stupid, dumb, weak, ignorant, submissive, and they don't want you to know about the real origins of humanity. They want you to think that we are the most intelligent and powerful generation that's ever existed, but that is far from the truth. You just need to look at our history, guys. Want you in a fluoridated, dumbed down state.
Wow, look at that.
So you actually can't see the truth. If you're aware of this, then you know how important it is to detox your body. That's why
Giants are way more compelling and believable than dinosaurs.
Humans discovered cocaine before they created civilization, and it may have actually sped up the process. At a site in Peru, archaeologists found evidence that humans were gathering vast amounts of coca leaves dating back to 8,000 years ago. But that's not all. They also found calcite along with the leaves. Calcite helps to release organic compounds, and when chewed with coca leaves creates a much more intense high. Evidence suggests that they were systematically collecting leaves and processing calcite at the site, and this just so happens to correlate with the explosion of systematic farming in the Andes around 8,000 years ago. But ancient humans were doing all kinds of drugs in the Stone Age. Check out my new video about it and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Northo2.
So man, Justin Bieber just
putting Jones and what's his name, Connors? That's diabolical.
Literally commented on Mariah Carey's post saying, "You killed your mom and sis for the Illuminati and literally ate your own mom." Like, what the fuck?
Oh.
So he just said that. What do you think about it, Hunter?
I mean, how else are you going to have the #1 Christmas song for like 20 years? Like, you're doing some ritual.
Yeah, I mean, so just guys, here's the thing. Just realize everyone you idolize, because this is the thing no one understands. All the fucking celebrities you idolize, except for Justin Bieber, are literally
except for Justin Bieber. Come on,
eating
man.
their own family members to be famous. They're eating their family. Like, imagine eating your mom. Can you think about that? How sick in the head you gotta be? Just so you can have a #1 Christmas song. This isn't even a joke. I'm not even kidding. It's fucking crazy. Eat your mom and your sister. And I don't know if you know the story. Mariah Carey's mom died. And by some strange circumstance, her sister dies in the same day. Are you serious? That's fucked. You might as well share this around, because who else ate their mom?
Truth is stranger than fiction.
So the heat wave in Europe has gone so bad that a total of 1,300 people have died already, with 1,000 in France alone. It has gone so hot that it has melted traffic lights, tram rails, and even the road. A bus driver in France quite literally passed out and crashed because of the heat. London quite literally had to cancel an extreme heat event because of extreme heat. It's gone so hot that in Berlin they quite literally have giant trucks to spray water people. Meanwhile in France, people are bathing in dirty water just to try and keep cool. Now Europe tends to deal horribly with heat because they have no air conditioning and their houses are specifically meant to retain heat, which is terrible for the summer. Meanwhile, Germany is still pushing anti-air conditioning propaganda to their citizens. But this has been great for fan companies because people are quite literally fighting tooth and nail just to buy them in stores now. And many parts of the world are not being super empathetic, like this one person from China who quite literally flexed how even the pigs have air conditioning. Unfortunately, this will only get worse if Europe does not adapt to these types of conditions, because climate change is only getting worse.
Research has people a little frightened to use it. There's a new study out that says after just one day, chemicals in sunscreens enter your bloodstream.
Before you grab that bottle of sunscreen, the first thing you need to do is check the ingredients on the back.
They are chemicals and they can potentially be dangerous.
Look at any bottle of sunscreen on the store shelf and it'll more than likely have one of these ingredients.
Avobenzone and oxybenzone are very commonly in your chemical sunscreens.
But a new study finds when you apply sunscreen with those chemicals, along with two other ones known as escamsol and octocrylene, they can absorb into your skin and into your bloodstream. Derma Health Skin and Laser recommends using a sunscreen with the following ingredients.
They're titanium dioxide and zinc oxide.
She says sunscreen with those ingredients reflect the sun instead of absorbing into your body.
The fact that the humanity believing the sun is bad for you is staggering.
You guys know who Yakub is?
Yakub, hey, bro, I got it written down. I was going.
You mean Jacob?
Talk to you about it.
So Yakub created white folks, all right? Nothing.
Come on, man.
Against white people.
Hey, don't he look like O.J. Simpson though?
He does. Yes, he does. Nothing against white people.
Yakub got big forehead.
I love my white people, okay? But let me explain something to y'all. White people only been here 6,000 years, okay? Yakub took albinos. It started changing the genes and started mating and changing, then the white man came.
Okay.
Houston, we have a problem. The ticks have become even more aggressive. This is from a Russian biologist. Apparently ticks are literally now hunting people, chasing their victims. That is not normal. It's a specific tick. They are resistant to hunger, extreme weather conditions, and aerosol sprays. Yeah, they've created a super bioweapon. It's absolutely terrifying what they're doing. We should maybe tell our scientists to stop playing God and stop biologically manufacturing insects into fucking disease-carrying weapons. But I'm sure we'll be too busy. Jack, come here! I'm sure we'll be too busy arguing about dumb shit like manufactured woke garbage.
Let the chicken loose. Chicken love ticks.
Do you know who created Superman? A Jewish artist. Do you know who created Batman? A Jewish artist. Do you know who created Spider-Man, X-Men, the Avengers, and even Black Panther? Stanley, a Jewish man.
Black Panther.
Are you telling me that nobody else can create superhero characters? No, they can, but they never are given a fair chance in the market. They keep this media monopoly on creativity and just the entire media, and they block everybody else. This is serious supremacy.
And just that. The same with music, sports, politics, and news. Total control and domination.
I just saw a video of a woman who said every time she got Starbucks, she would come home and attempt to divorce her husband, like clockwork. And the moment she stopped getting Starbucks, she stopped doing that. And she's been in a super happy marriage for the last 3 years. And we remember this experiment Tyrone Hayes did that he got like
No more Starbucks for wifey.
Executed by Big Pharma, where he gave frogs atrazine, which, by the way, Big Pharma was spraying on Americans' crops and putting all over our food, and it turned the frogs gay. And the female frogs turned aggressive towards the males. Makes me wonder
just like what he says. What's his name? Alex Jones says.
This hate that women openly have towards the entire male gender, could that be a chemical imbalance due to the things that they are consuming? I think women have gone through horrible things for generations thanks to men, and that's just a fact. So of course there's a lot of pushback naturally happen because of that. Could the government and these big corporations be purposely putting in these chemicals in our water supplies, our foods, the things we consume, as a way to fuel this gender war even more so we never get out of it? Because the truth is that yes, there's very shady men, but there's also really, really good men. I know them and I'm married to one as well. And it takes time to heal your relationship with masculinity, with men, especially if you've been sexually assaulted, because I've been there myself, and it shows up first as rage, as hate, but that shouldn't close you up forever to an entire gender. But you will never see that if your body's literally chemically wired to hate men. Because the fastest way to control an entire population is by dividing the men from the woman, because we needed each other all along.
Black people are not the original inhabitants of South Africa, which, in fact, they're realizing that now. When they claimed that they owned all the land, the original inhabitants, of whom there are not many left, said, excuse me, we were the original inhabitants. You guys were migrants here as well, which they were. Okay, the original inhabitants of Southern Africa are called the Khoisan. In the West, the Bushmen are Khoisan. Hottentots are Khoisan. But you can't use those words anymore. You now have to call them Khoisan. Okay? All right. Now, and they were the inhabitants of the whole of Southern Africa. So the whole of South Africa at one stage were Khoisan. The black people originated in what is now Cameroon. That's where they...
Hold on, Khoisan aren't black?
No.
What are they?
They're a completely separate ethnicity all on their own. In fact, if you look at them, they're kind of yellowy. They're a light brown yellow color. Right. But they look more Asian than African. They do not consider themselves African.
Interesting.
When the white guys arrive in Cape Town, so 1652 is when Dutch guys arrived there. At that stage, you could have divided South Africa almost exactly 50-50, what's now South Africa. The western half of the country was entirely Khoisan. There were no black people there. None at all. Only Khoisan. So we're Cape Towners, all that area. Khoisan people. The northern part of the country did have black people. They'd started arriving, and they were still migrating.
How long have they been there in the northern?
You know what? I think you should learn African history from non-Africans. What do you think?
It's one big massive plan. Salvage yards all around America right now are burning up. Now in salvage yards, they have cars. They have a bunch of different old parts.
Vintage cars.
Now here's the thing. For one, major outlets aren't reporting on this, but I've been seeing this from independent journalists and independent outlets. They're saying there's tens of dozens of these yards burning up. And they're like, this is the weirdest one. So there's one in Idaho. It's called L&L Classic Auto. They're permanently out of business now because of a massive fire that took out 9,000 cars.
9,000 cars.
That's a lot of cars. So they had 10,000 cars on their lot. 9,000 of them are gone.
We had 10,000 cars. And if you look at 90% of the inventory, we probably lost 9,000. There's not one part of this yard that wasn't affected somehow by this fire.
Now, they had all these classic cars. In insurance, you can't cover these cars. So insurance, they're SOL. So in 2021, there was an investment infrastructure bill that was signed by Biden. So this infrastructure bill has language. Now, if you look up section 24,220, in that part of the bill, it has an AI system that is in every single car. It's federal law after 2026. So 2027 on down, it's mandatory.
You got to have it in your car.
No, it's going to be in your car.
Oh, it's going to be in your car. They meet the manufacturer and they're like, put this shit in the actual car. And then the dude in the video was like, I just don't understand how this happened because it was like all over the place. And it's like, how do you lose your whole inventory like that?
Right. And they're saying that a fire called median fire that's happening, right? And it burnt up over 8,000 acres. So I think it's just collateral damage because it did do damage in other parts.
Yeah, but that just sounds convenient.
Yeah, sounds convenient.
Covering it up.
And if you look into other salvage yards, there's massive fires just randomly happening and it's burning up these salvage yards.
Now, do you think they're using the same thing they use in the Maui fires to burn these cars up?
Good question.
Because I don't think that they're actually just sending actual arsonists like old school. I feel like they're doing that shit from above. And they're probably scanning, all right, where's all these, where are all the junkyards at? We got to start burning them. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that going forward from now until next year.
Yeah, because it's a bigger play. So if we're talking about DEWs, so for one, they could do that from space. That's the thing. Trump posted a picture of him in space in a ship where he presses a button and he's literally sending DEWs and you see explosions behind him.
Literally.
He posted this.
He literally posted that picture. Now it's making sense.
Now it's making sense.
Because we're like,
he's telling you.
He's fucking telling you.
And it makes sense because it does play into Agenda 2030. Because if we're talking about a whole totalitarian system to where they're controlling everything, you got to control transportation too. And it benefits who? Tesla. Who's his boy?
Tech Mafia.
There we go. We got the technocrats covering every position.
It helps all of them, really. Amazon.
They don't want no parts around for older models.
Well, it's over. Deadly cat fungus and microticks are coming for us. The USDA just admitted in an X post that you have to be ready for those microticks that are even smaller than poppy seeds. Of course, we knew that because people have been reporting these microticks for a month now. Ticks so small that you won't even know they're attached to you until it's too late.
Those are all little baby ticks.
That is crazy, folks.
Crawling up my leg.
Is this happening really in America?
So,
I thought these were scabs. And then I'm like, well, why would I have a scab? So this morning I realized I had these things in between my nails. And I thought, oh, is it dirt? And then I looked closer. I was like, oh, it looks like a scab. And then I'm talking to my mom on the phone, and I'm just kind of like playing around with my hands. And I'm realizing that these are actually seed ticks. And they're on this hand too. Once I realized they were on multiple of my hands, that's when I was like, what are these? That is a seed tick.
And as if this tick situation wasn't bad enough already, they're saying a deadly cat fungus is about to hit the US. Scientists just found it inside wild mammals, birds, and even reptiles in Brazil. It spreads through infected cats and can infect humans. One CDC expert warns it's only a matter of time before it reaches the United States, and that raises the question, why are all these deadly biological outbreaks happening at the same damn time? We got a tick invasion that can make people allergic to meat or just kill them. We've got cannibal insects wreaking havoc in many states, and now they're talking about a cat fungus. What exactly are they trying to do?
Common denominator is Bill. If you know, you know.
Have sex. What's the deal with alien greys and genetic experimentations? Right? Why the need
what's the deal
for all that? I don't believe that these guys are from Arcturus or from Orion or from any other planet out there. These are demons. It's repackaged Genesis 6 activity. If all
fallen angels.
The angels had to do was have sex, there'd be no reason for alien greys and scientific experimentations and extraction of genetic material. And it's not just people. They're cattle mutilations. It's well documented. This stuff's not crazy. This stuff is real. A farmer looks out in his field and finds a cow completely mutilated with laser precision cut, organs removed from its body. No blood. What's up with that? My belief is that these guys are nothing more than biological suits for the disembodied spirits to inhabit. Because after Yeshua showed up, a demon would go into a person and then a Christian would show up and cast them out. So the devil's got a problem now. Every time we go into people, Christians cast
and they smell like sulfur.
Us out. No, they're still doing it. Obviously, people are still demon possessed. But what if they could create their own little biological suits?
Are electroparasites that they have introduced into us. Electroparasites, they're cellular micro devices. And apparently they're in all the different vaccine types. And they're just floating around. They seem to congregate. They do different things. They seem to be able to wiggle. And some are fibrous. Some are glowing in different colors. They're employing properties of what you find in nanotech anyway. And the Morgellons people were finding this in their bodies, and they were suffering extremely. Some of them had giant lesions that let out. I hate to say this because people are going to think I'm crazy, but you can watch my videos on YouTube. They're still up there and all over, from chemtrails to pseudo-life. So the people were issuing from their bodies, in some cases, bits of bark, twigs, leaves. These were life forms that the bodies were making from this assembling material.
Well, let me just say a couple things here, Sophia, as we continue this incredible conversation about what's happening to humanity, this anti-human terroristic plot to destroy humanity and to make people transhuman. My friend Firemedic 8, whose video is there at the top of the phaser.com as we're having this conversation, in a different video, he likes to study all sorts of different things, what's in the air, what's in the water. He put out a dish, and then the next day he took a look at what was in the rainwater, and he found these Morgellons-like structures in rainwater. I don't want to startle anyone, but it really does seem like these things are kind of everywhere.
Microwave radiation pulsing through our urban world today could very well be the newest phase of a giant experiment. With the signing of the Atomic Energy Act in 1946, the Manhattan Project became the Atomic Energy Commission, which created
Forget that, the usual suspects.
The Joint Committee on Atomic Energy. This was an independent, all-powerful congressional entity, the most powerful secret committee in modern history, free from oversight and with legislative authority. It was done away with in 1977, the same year the Atomic Energy Commission was renamed the Department of Energy. Today, the Department of Energy is known as the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, DEEP, D-E-E-P. Its ostensible focus exploring production of energy for the welfare of the planet and protection of the environment, when the environment is really being taken apart and changed.
Billionaires are using weather to push their smart city agenda. You look at the history of hurricanes in the Atlantic and entire grids are destroyed. The people who are making plays right now, they're trying to do the data center. The smart city thing has been investigated. Puerto Rico, after Maria, their grid was damaged. And so they were going to pay a private energy firm to establish a grid around the whole island. The Puerto Ricans got so upset about it. They were like, we should do small grids and they should be solar based. That way, if one grid goes down, the next grid still has power. Basic logic, but it doesn't support the big power agenda. They failed to do so. Literally, they're setting up to need destruction to happen because when the grid goes down, it puts all of the emergency policies into place. Every hurricane has the precedent. So they're like, have to build the grid back because people need access to phones. People need access to power. All of the billionaires already have their plans for what they want to put into place.
They just need to wipe it out.
And they get to do what they wanted.
I think that's why Bad Bunny did that bit. Super Bowl halftime show, right? They were on the power line.
I really wish I had solar.
This Polish painter said he had no idea what his own paintings meant, but everyone who studies his childhood disagrees. Meet Zdzisław Beksiński. No formal art training, he actually studied architecture. By the 1970s, he was painting things like this. A skeletal creature crawling low across a devastated landscape. Sinew and bone rendered in obsessive photographic detail. Fans call it Night Creeper. Beksiński refused to title any of his paintings. He said he didn't know what they meant, and he didn't want to know. But here's what biographers point to instead. Beksiński was a child during World War II, growing up in Nazi then Soviet-occupied Poland. Ruin, decay, bodies reduced to landscape. It's the visual language of a country that had been through hell. And it's the exact language his paintings speak in. Decades later, he called his style photograph in dreams. Critics call it something closer to photograph in memory.
If he grew up in the silent generation, he could explain the head strap on the face.
You know, every civilization seems to have the same stories. Kings, emperors, the elites searching for a secret meal that grants power. In Greek mythology, ambrosia was the food of the gods, and you should probably look into what company uses that actual name. It'll connect some dots. You know, and just look into what that business is actually doing. What is their business? For hundreds and thousands of years, people have talked about eating what we consider mythical creatures, or hell, even at this point, each other. But it's different names, it's different centuries, but it's always the same promise. If you eat this, you drink this, you consume this, you become more than human. You have new movies like The Substance, you have older movies like Death Becomes Her. You have one of my favorite movies from the 80s, Society, which may be hitting a little closer to home and into reality. Well,
I gotta check that out.
Wealthy teenagers discovers that his rich family and their neighbors is actually part of a parasitic cult of social elites who feed off the working class. That doesn't sound familiar at all of what happens today. If you pay attention to the way that celebrities and rich people look right now, they seem to be looking less and less human. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy of non-humans controlling our government, but, you know, it could be.
Want to learn the biological effects of cannibalism? Of course you do. Now, so far we've learned about mad cow disease from cow cannibalism, as well as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which can be transmitted through cannibalism via humans, and even the most notorious Kuru disease, all of which are prion diseases, which are diseases caused by the misfolded versions of healthy prions that you typically need in order to survive your day-to-day life. Now, there's something I haven't told you guys about prions. And no, it's not that they're not only found in brain tissue, even though that's definitely an important thing that we should talk about, but it's that prion diseases only really affect mammals, which means other animals that commit cannibalism don't get prion diseases. Like the Australian redback spider, for instance, yeah, they can commit as much cannibalism as they want and not have to worry about prions. Crab spiders that literally eat their own mothers as babies. Yeah, they don't have to worry about prions either. Oh yeah, and female praying mantises, which are very well known to eat their male partners after doing the deed. Yeah, they don't have to care either. Even certain species of snakes, like this Cape Cobra right here, can commit cannibalism to their heart's desire and not worry about a single misfolded prion. So yeah, just keep taking out your rivals by eating them. But if you're a human on the other hand, just don't do it.
What if I get zombie blood in my eyes? Will I get a prion disease?
This dude cracked the code and proved that NASA is lying about what space truly is, guys. Have a look at this. This certainly looks like we are looking into water. Look at the stars. Look at the patterns of the stars. They look like cymatics, like frequencies of sound pitched into water. This looks like the waters above, as mentioned in the Bible, the Quran, all religious texts, all of our ancestors told us, as above, so below. The firmament above is full of water. Cymatics. This is what we're looking at. Now, Nikola Tesla said it himself. If you wish to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, vibration. Everything is energy, frequency, vibration, including the stars. The stars are within the waters above the firmament. That's why we see rainbows. Rainbows always take on the shape of the reflective surface that it's reflecting off of, a dome shape. That's why they are arched. You're seeing it clear as day right now, guys. Don't listen to NASA. If you study your ancient ancestors and the Bible, this is exactly how they depict the earth. The waters above the firmament. That's why the sky is blue, guys. It's plain as day. This makes so much more sense. And it's right in front of your face. The evidence is right there. I just showed you. Everyone asks, why would they lie about it? They're hiding God's true creation. They want you to think that you're insignificant, that this all came from a big bang, that there's no, meaning to life. That couldn't be further from the truth. You have a creator who cares about you. This creation is divine. Once you understand this creation, you take your true power back. This is why they poison the air, the food, and the water supply, to keep you in a lowered state of consciousness so you don't know the truth. And so you always will stay a slave in their system. That's why it's never been more important to take your physical health back, to detox.
This is insane. Los Angeles is breathing toxic smoke under a state of emergency, and the BlackRock connection is ringing alarm bells. A massive fire has been burning for days at a Lineage cold storage facility in Boyle Heights, sending a thick smoke plume across Los Angeles, while residents are being warned about air quality and urged to limit exposure. Millions of people are being told to stay inside, keep their windows closed, avoid outdoor activity, and change the way they live because a single corporate facility suffered a catastrophic failure. This isn't some small warehouse on the edge of town. Lineage is one of the largest cold storage companies on Earth, operating hundreds of facilities and controlling a critical piece of the food supply chain. The Boyle Heights complex is a massive industrial site packed with refrigeration systems, specialized insulation materials, rooftop solar infrastructure, and tens of millions of pounds of stored food. And this isn't the first major fire linked to this location. The same facility experienced a significant rooftop solar panel fire in 2024. Now, another massive fire is burning for days. Emergency declarations have been issued. Toxic smoke continues drifting across the region, and millions of people are left dealing with the fallout. Then people started looking into who stands behind the company. Can you guess who's among the major
BlackRock
institutional investors? BlackRock and Vanguard. And that's where the questions start. Every time something like this happens, the public is told everything is under control. Every time the warnings get extended. Every time the smoke keeps coming. And every time ordinary people are expected to absorb the consequences while the corporations behind these facilities keep moving forward. Maybe it's exactly what we're being told. But after the emergency declarations, the repeat fire, the toxic smoke, and the Wall Street connections, a lot of people aren't so sure. How many times are people expected to ignore the red flags before they start connecting the dots?
BlackRock owns everything.
Legend says there is a half-human, half-snake living in the secret basement of a popular mall near Manila called Robinson's Galleria. Some say the human snake is actually a child of John Gokungwe, the owner of Robinson Malls. This little boy, this little creature, does not like to eat anything but pretty young women. Now, it's debatable what he does with these women. Some versions of the urban legend say that he swallows them whole like a snake. Others say that he digs his fangs into their necks and drains them of every drop of their blood, just leaving bloodless, empty shells of dead women all around him? Either way, the family was forced to build a massive compound to house their son that happened to be half human, half snake. And they had to constantly find young women to feed their son. But you cannot just throw a big building in the middle of nowhere and have a bunch of young women disappear that's connected to that building and think that nothing is going to happen. So the only solution that they could come up with that made logical sense was a mall. It would give the family unlimited access to girls, and it would house their son in the underground basement. The fitting rooms were said to have these hidden cameras, and sometimes there would be two-way mirrors that allowed their son to see these girls. He's very particular. He likes them young and pretty. He has a style. Even though he's trapped in the basement, he would pick the ones that he wanted, and with the press of a button inside the fitting rooms, the floor would disappear from underneath them, and they would slide down the tunnel straight into his mouth.
They should have asked help from Epstein.
This is Yoshinori Asumi. You've probably never heard of him. In 2016, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for discovering something that will forever change the future of our health. What he discovered requires 0 medications. It can be done completely for free. What he discovered might be the key to fighting chronic diseases. He was awarded this prize in 2016, and his discovery was in the cells. He discovered that we can make ourselves get into a process of cleaning out and repairing damaged cells, healing our bodies on a cellular level without medications for free. It's called autophagy. He found that we can put our bodies in this state of autophagy, of healing, simply by refraining from food for a certain amount of time. On average, autophagy tends to start at about 16 hours of fasting.
It can only be done with willpower, and not many people have that.
It is alleged that in 1942, 870,000 Jews were brought by train to the Treblinka camp, which is 60 kilometers northeast of Warsaw. Then these people were herded to massive diesel gas chambers. Despite the fact that it's almost impossible to kill people with diesel gas, it is alleged that people died within minutes. Afterwards, other prisoners were forced to bury the bodies in mass graves. As there were never any bodies discovered after the war, the story says Nazis forced other prisoners to dig all these people up again and then burn them to ash on huge wooden pyres. In October 1999, a small group of Australian researchers traveled to the area in Poland where the Treblinka camp was located. They were looking for signs or proof of mass graves. The graves should have been pretty easy to find as the whole camp is only 300 meters long by 200 meters wide. Even if they were stacked 6 deep, 870,000 bodies would take up more than the whole camp area. So the team took ground penetration radar systems, machines that can pick up earth disturbances and objects as small as a knife, all the way down to 30 meters. The results can then be seen immediately as they're projected as pictures onto a computer monitor. The team spent 3 weeks scanning the whole camp area, and the scans were saved onto a laptop. As well as scanning, the team took measurements to determine the age of the trees, and they also took earth core samples down to 6 meters looking for signs of human and wooden ash. They also scanned and took control samples of the grounds outside the camp area. And after 3 weeks, the team had found nothing. No graves, no ash, no remains of buildings or fences. So they returned to Australia. The scans had been stored on the computer hard drives, were then transferred to CD-ROMs. These were then sent to experts worldwide. The results obtained by the Australian researchers showed that with 100% certainty that a Nazi extermination camp never existed in the area called Treblinka.
What? Let me know how you feel about this in the comments.
So I've been reading this book called Generative Energy by this Dr. Ray Peat, and honestly, it's totally shifted my outlook on diet, health, and wellness. The thesis of the book is essentially you can do whatever you want as long as you say you're peating or that what you're doing is peaty. So you can chain smoke cigarettes, drink copious amounts of alcohol, and most importantly, consume pounds of sugar. And as long as you say that you're peating or that it's peaty, you're basically just taking senzu beans. No counting calories, no tracking macro or micronutrients. It's literally just magic words. It is insane how this works. Oh, but critically, the one other thing you must do for this to work is occasionally have a carrot salad.
Everyone's been talking about Robert Eggers' werewolf film and how dark and scary it looks. And it really does. Like, look at the imagery. However, one of the things that I wanted to point out that no one seems to be talking about is the fact that this film does have a history tied to it and not often talked about, not as much as the witch trials. In the year of 1589, there was a most infamous case of Peter Stump. Now, Peter Stump was a wealthy German farmer who was accused of terrorizing the region for 25 years. Supposedly, he was 12 years old when he made a pact with the devil and started doing black magic. And supposedly, the devil had given him a magic belt that physically transformed him into this beast. So apparently, this Peter Stump guy would eat goats and lambs and sheep as well as people, men, women, and children. Confessed to killing and eating 14 children. Not only did he just kill 14 children, no. Apparently he went out with his son into the woods, transformed, and killed and devoured his own son. So yeah, he was not just a werewolf monster, he was a murderer and a cannibal. So let me know, are you excited for this film? Do you know about the werewolf trials? Let me know, okay?
The Hawkins Lab. Yeah. That's a real place. Yes. Project Montauk. It's in New York. I think it was a girl, right? Died there recently.
Police say the victim was with friends when she fell from the 5-story building. The property is known for its use as a filming location for the Netflix series
Stranger Things.
There was people like us that just go and explore stuff. It's abandoned, but people can still go there just to explore, right? I think it was a girl who went with her friend. Police is still investigating right now. People are saying like she off the building. Randomly, right? Conspiracies like... She didn't slip? She fell off the building. But we don't know how. We don't know if the friend her off. The only evidence that we have is the Duffer Brothers said in one interview they don't like filming at the basement of the Hawkins Lab because they said it's haunted.
Definitely there was concerns about Hawkins Lab. Like if you went down to the basements, there was definitely rumors of being haunted and the vibes were just
so bad. No, you know when you're in a building where something bad happened and this was an old mental institution when
they would take people under in these tunnels.
And apparently the reason they had the tunnels was so the neighbors couldn't hear people screaming, which is really dark. So initially we were going to shoot down there, and Ross and I went down there. We said, no, we're not.
Bad fun.
Bad mojo.
If it's not the friend that f***ed her off, maybe it was a voice that got to her that's like, oh, you need to jump. Because how do you be at the top of the building and you fall? Yeah, why was she up there? That's what I'm saying.
The brothers, they know for sure.
Guys, something is going on in Area 51 right now because 17 earthquakes just hit in a single day, and a Harvard scientist is saying that they are probably not natural. So just 2 days ago, 17 earthquakes hit right next to Area 51 within the same 24 hours. The biggest one was actually a 4.4 magnitude, but every single one of them was way closer to the surface than normal. They're saying that normal earthquakes in that area happen miles and miles deep, and these were basically right underneath the base. A Harvard astrophysicist just went on national TV and said that these are unlikely to be natural and that someone might be testing something down there.
Now, it could just be a cluster of earthquakes, or they could be doing some legitimate underground testing out in that region.
So there's earthquakes that are happening at a suspicious depth at the most secretive military base on Earth, right next to where they used to test military weapons underground. Nobody has confirmed anything, and the government's official earthquake agency says that this is completely natural. But there's even other scientists that are chiming in saying that there are things about this that don't add up and need a closer look. The earthquakes did happen, that is a fact, but is something actually going on at Area 51 right now, or is it all just a conspiracy?
I believe it was much bigger than that.
In Fear and Loathing, there is one symbol that can change how you read the entire book, and almost nobody even notices that it's there. It's not the bats, it's not the drugs, it's not the desert, or even the American dream. It's a grapefruit. Early on in the trip, before the worst of it sets in, the attorney says vitamin C will need all we can get. We have 2 men in the desert that are worried about getting in their vitamins. But that's the crazy part. This grapefruit makes its way alongside them the whole entire journey. Then near the end, when Duke is on the plane, he pulls out a grapefruit in front of the stewardess with a big knife, and he says, I never go anywhere without my grapefruit. And this is what's so strange, because Thompson literally kind of hides this symbol while other ones scream off the page the entire novel. So you forget its pattern, but by the end, you recognize, you're like, this is showing up the same way that it shows up in the lives of Americans. By 1971, Americans were knee-deep in the middle of a vitamin C craze. Linus Pauling had helped convince the public that megadoses of vitamin C could prevent literally anything, especially colds. The easy read is that the grapefruit is a lie. You have this small disciplined health gesture that helps you ignore the giant things that are going to destroy you. In the case of Raoul Duke, we have a man who fixes nothing. He doesn't quit the drugs, he doesn't leave, but he never goes anywhere without his grapefruit. But then we have another read. Maybe this grapefruit is a small shred of sanity that Duke has left. In the middle of total destruction, he still slices the fruit. A part of him wants to live. An animal part of him wants to survive. That's the pilot light. And here's the trap. The gesture that keeps you alive and the gesture that lets you avoid what's killing you are the exact same thing. We do this. We optimize one small health thing. We track everything, but we ignore the giant elephant in the corner. We count the macros, we count the sleep, but we avoid the shitty habits that we daily do within our lives. Duke poisons himself, but still faithfully cuts that grapefruit. One small little vote for staying alive while surrounded by everything that's killing him. So what's your grapefruit? One version of you that keeps you alive and one version that keeps you from living. From the inside, they look the exact same. You won't know which one yours is, and neither did he.
This is a really great analysis.
Let's talk about the species that nearly wiped out the entire predator civilization. They're known as rage. In the year 2692, centuries after every Alien and every Predator movie, after every event that we know of, a massive predator fleet entered human space. Humanity thought they were at war with the Yautja, but they weren't invading. They were running for their lives. For the first time in their history, they encountered an enemy that they could not defeat using strength, honor, or superior skill. Now, the Rage aren't really a civilization. It's more of a culmination of technological and biological evolution. This is genetic engineering, DNA splicing, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence fused together on a scale never seen before. By the way, remember in Alien Resurrection when the military was trying to find ways to control the xenomorph species? Well, the Rage did. They did what Weyland-Yutani and the military have always wanted to do. Through advanced scientific manipulation, they not only bred and weaponized the xenomorph species in massive numbers, they unleashed this entire force on different alien worlds. Different other species were completely wiped out. Predator strongholds and outpost worlds were wiped out. Guys, I'm about to cover one of the best alien stories on my YouTube channel. This is too big for TikTok. Y'all don't get it. This is like if Infinity War and Endgame were meshed together into one big, huge movie. This is an entire trilogy. If you want to see this, you know what to do.
The Rage War trilogy is absolutely pure insanity and nightmare fuel.
Let's talk about the unsolved disappearance of 6-year-old Dennis Martin in the Appalachian Mountains. Father's Day, June 1969, Dennis, his brother, his father, and his grandfather took a Father's Day trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in the Appalachian Mountains. The trip was a tradition for the Martin family and nothing they hadn't done before. But unfortunately for them, this is a trip they would never, ever forget. The family hiked from Cades Cove to Russell Field and camped overnight, and the next day they hiked to Spence Field, which is just off the Appalachian Trail. It was in Spence Field where they camped for a couple of days and they met another family who also happened to have young boys. Dennis, his brother, and the other young boys really enjoyed each other's company and they started playing pranks on their respective families. They would hide in the bushes and jump out at them. But after a couple of times of them feeling like the parents had them figured out, they decided to change up their strategy a little bit. And the other boys asked Dennis to take off his red shirt because they felt that the parents could see his red shirt through the bushes and that's how they were being given away. The boys were within eye view of their parents, but Dennis removes his shirt and continues to play the same game. Most of the boys went to the left, Dennis went to the right, and the last time his father saw him, he was crouching behind a bush, getting ready to scare them. And for all intents and purposes after that point, Dennis disappeared off the face of the earth. The boys returned and Dennis did not. Dennis' father, William, stood up to try to find him. It was very clear after only 30 seconds he was nowhere in sight. Dennis's family becomes panicked, along with the other families who were at the campsite at the time, and Dennis's father runs 2 miles up the Appalachian Trail shouting his name and searching for him, and it was very clear at that point he was nowhere to be found. Shortly after they discovered Dennis disappeared, a huge storm rolled in that laid out over 3 inches of rain, which when you're missing someone in the wilderness, any kind of tracks that you can find that may have been theirs are extremely helpful. And unfortunately, that storm washed those away. Dennis's grandfather hiked to the nearest ranger station. He gets to the ranger station. It's almost after 9 o'clock, and that's when the official search begins. The National Guard, multiple police agencies, and over 1,500 volunteers searched 56 square miles of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park without finding a trace of him. The only potential trace that they found of him were a child's footprints near a stream where one of the feet had a shoe on it and the other foot appeared to be barefoot. Those footprints disappeared as soon as they entered the stream. While interviewing witnesses, a man came forward and said that he heard a scream shortly after the time of Dennis's disappearance, followed by a figure running through the woods with something red in its hands, which seemingly seemed to be Dennis's shirt that he took off.
Oh man. This is frightening, my goodness.
While Hill exists because a cult tried to set a little girl on fire in this attempt to bring forth their god, but it didn't work, and all that happened was all the pain and suffering caused a rage so deep that it split dimensions. Let me explain. Alessa Gillespie was a child that grew up in Silent Hill, and her mother was part of a cult called the Order. They're this doomsday cult that believes that humanity has been corrupted, and it is their responsibility to bring about a cleansing and a world that has been unstained by evil. Now, Alessa's mother, Dahlia, is the leader of this cult, and she claims that Alessa is the seed of this embryonic god because she was conceived immaculately. Now, the story never confirms or denies that this happens, but we do know that Alessa was born with some supernatural powers. From birth, her mother begins indoctrinating Alessa into this cult, hoping that she would one day become the next leader, but then she starts to realize that all of Alessa's supernatural powers would actually make her the perfect host for their god. So Dahlia ends up sacrificing Alessa in flames, trying to bring about their god, and it's in this horrifying moment that Alessa's pain and suffering creates a rage so deep that it splits the town in two. One part is trapped in this endless fog, and the other part is this twisted, nightmarish alternate dimension, but both places psychologically torture you. All of the monsters and horrifying things that are now within Silent Hill are manifestations of a person's own personal hell, which is why everybody that goes there sees different things. So when you think about Silent Hill, just remember that it's a liminal space brought about by a cult, and it takes your own personal fears and uses them against you.
Wasn't Silent Hill built over a forgotten Indian burial ground?
For tetanus, you need rotten meat. Okay, that's how the tetanus vaccine's made, with rotten meat. Yeah, a big wake-up call with tetanus. So, you know, what we see, if anyone's worried about tetanus, what we're shown is a picture of a soldier from like the 1800s with he's naked and his back is arched. If you just Google tetanus right now and you look for images, you'll get this image. And so that's what we're told will happen if we get tetanus. It's a sure thing. You're just going to get tetanus and you're going to die. Well, the fact of the matter is that when I started doing my deep dive, in World War I, look, it was fought in the trenches with horses. That's where you get tetanus from ruminant animals. It lives in their gut, then it goes in the soil, and it's just a spore. Doesn't do anything until it gets into an area that doesn't have oxygen. So you get a cut, you get a surgeon to close you up real nice without cleaning it out properly, and you're set up for tetanus, which will transform from a spore to a different kind of a microbe and start releasing a toxin that can, it first starts as numbness, usually in that limb. The extreme case is in that soldier who would have been malnourished, stressed out, probably vaccinated for smallpox before he hit the fields, and exposed to enormous amounts of tetanus, possibly gunshot wound or a slice somewhere, and then sewn up. So yeah, his nervous system could have had a real big dose of toxin, and nobody did anything about it. That's the worst case scenario. You don't want that to happen. But in today, I've treated tetanus. Let's just put it that way. I've treated several cases of tetanus. One of the cases was a neurologically diagnosed tetanus. So tetanus is treatable. You can get on it early. Rabbit studies have shown that if you give vitamin C, if you have a good high vitamin C level before you put glass with tetanus spores on it inside the skin of a rabbit, that you can prevent the tetanus from happening. Even if you give the vitamin C at the time of the injury, you can prevent it from happening. If you give it after the event, the death rate goes down to, very, very low, if not zero. So vitamin C is a main factor, but the biggest factor is cleaning a wound and keeping the wound open if you think it's a dirty wound, not to close it straight up, which is why nails, you say stepping on a nail is the classic, because rust can kind of hold the old spores inside of it. You step on the nail, you get inoculated, and then you wait for it to heal over. Well, you have to open that wound if that's going to happen. But tetanus has been, there's a whole series of reports on instances where the cotton that was made for menstrual pad postpartum was impregnated with tetanus, and they got horrible cases of tetanus just from using those menstrual pads. So the hospital systems have also been, responsible. The biggest thing is that being vaccinated for tetanus is not necessarily security against not getting tetanus.
A Reddit user posted this picture after finding a hidden house sealed inside of his attic. They first posted about it back in 2020, but for some reason, I'm just now hearing about this. In their initial post, they explained that the building used to be a 2-story shop where the shop owners used to live upstairs and the shop was downstairs. Well, the building was then converted into a church where they then sealed the old upstairs portion of the building off and just built a new addition around it. So then the Reddit user living there is left with this, an abandoned second-story space that has been completely sealed off from the rest of the house for God knows how long, and also completely stuck in time. Now, a lot of people in the comments were speculating that when this was turned into a church, this was most likely the pastor's apartment, which some say makes it even creepier. While exploring, they found a second hatch in the ceiling, suggesting that there's another attic attached to the second-story room. But the user couldn't get into it without using the ladder to get back down, and when they said they would go inside and post updates, they never posted on the Reddit thread again.
This is the craziest backrooms theory I've ever seen, and I need y'all to stay with me here. What if the backrooms were not a glitch in modern technology, but something that has been hunting down humanity since the dawn of time? There is a terrifying theory circulating around the internet right now that Async did not create the backrooms in the 1980s, but instead just opened the door to something that was already waiting for them. Think about the ancient Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. King Minos built a massive, inescapable labyrinth of endless, confusing stone corridors. And trapped inside it was a twisted, monstrous entity that fed on the lost. The general theory about the backrooms is that it's a cosmic anomaly that adapts to the human subconscious. And let's put that within the context of this theory. In ancient times, humanity understood the world through stone, torches, and mythology. So the backrooms manifested itself as a stone labyrinth, and the entity manifested itself as the damn Minotaur. And according to this theory, as human architecture evolved, the backrooms evolved with us. It morphed into the endless medieval catacombs, into the oppressive Victorian asylums, into the infinite fluorescent-lit office spaces of the late 20th century. It takes most of our mundane, repetitive architecture and turns it into a trap. So what if the yellow walls weren't just a glitch in reality? What if they're just the modern skin of an ancient cosmic predator? And so according to this theory, we didn't just build the backrooms, we gave them a name. To play into this theory, what era of the backrooms would you be most scared to be trapped in? Let me know in the comments.
Listen to this.
Built a ship of death called the Titanic.
Teach your children our real history.
The Titanic was a design of the Jesuit order to get rid of the opposition to the creation of a central bank in the United States.
And the men on the Titanic were opposed to a central bank. They had to die. Among those were John Jacob Astor, Isidor Straus, Benjamin Guggenheim,
JFK, Gaddafi,
who were opposed to a central bank in America. Therefore, they had to be taken out of the way, and they were on the Titanic.
The company building the ship was owned by J.P. Morgan, who was himself an agent of the Rothschilds family.
In other words,
the Rothschilds being the bankers for the Pope and the Vatican. The main Jesuit targets were brought on board. The captain of the ship was Edward John Smith. It appears from his actions that Captain Smith was a Jesuit coadjutor, that is, a Jesuit who has taken the oath but does not wear the robes. A coadjutor blends into the scenery and never looks like a Jesuit priest. It is a veteran sea captain, Edward Smith, who orders the ship to travel through an 80-square-mile ice field at full speed on a moonless night. There had been over 8 telegrams warning the captain of the danger.
He's warned 8 times, slow the ship down, slow the Titanic down, you're going too fast. Not once stopped. Knew there was an iceberg field up ahead, knew that he should have slowed down, but didn't. And so you look and you say, how was it that this man could go headlong into a field of icebergs and not slow the ship
Because
down.
they serve
not
Satan
be more careful.
and not God.
The only conclusion you can draw is as a coadjutor of the Jesuit order, right through the line, the chain of
Watch
command.
Europe at the Last Battle
He
on my
was
website.
told,
Link is in my bio.
"Sink the ship."
Everything we embrace is a lie. Government's lies run deep.
Guys, I'm currently at Armenia's only surviving pagan temple that's older than Christianity.
This is Garni Temple, built around the 1st century AD during the reign of King Tridates I. And what makes this place so powerful is what came a few centuries later. This temple survived an entire transformation of a kingdom from pagan Armenia to Christian Armenia in 301 AD. Now, it was likely dedicated to the sun god Mir, built in a Hellenistic Greco-Roman style, and is one of the last remaining reminders before Christianity changed everything.
There is no God except Jesus Christ.
After earthquakes, floods, and political turmoil, the skies are now turning red. This is what Venezuela's capital of Caracas looks like today. And while there's a perfectly scientific and non-apocalyptic explanation for this phenomenon, with the backdrop of the year that Venezuela has been having, it's fair to understand why this has triggered such a huge amount of superstition online. Because not only was the country thrown into political chaos after Maduro was captured in January, but then the war broke out in the Middle East, only exacerbating their economic hardship. After that, they were hit by not one, but 2 devastating earthquakes, one of which was the most powerful they've experienced in over 100 years. And right as residents are picking up the pieces and searching for the bodies of their loved ones in the rubble, they've been hit by a 3rd natural disaster. Severe flooding is now swept through the country's northwest, submerging homes, overflowing rivers, and causing landslides. And this is all while 43,000 people are still unaccounted for from the earthquakes alone. NASA estimates that nearly 60,000 buildings have been destroyed or damaged, and a food crisis is now looming, with the World Food Program appealing for $50 million to provide emergency food for up to 500,000 people. So, whatever you do, be sure to keep the people of Venezuela in your thoughts and prayers.
Let's talk. Amen. You know, folks, the safest place to be is in Jesus.
Talk about one of the weirdest and creepiest broadcasts in Mexican TV history, the Bruja de Monterrey broadcast. In 2006, popular Mexican TV
Oh, I remember this. Mexico is full of witches and black magic.
show Primer Impacto would air one of its most controversial and talked about segments yet, the Bruja de Monterrey episode, in where they'd cover a man named Jerónimo Flores that was part of a UFO group, claiming that him and his group captured a real-life witch flying over the mountains of Monterrey.
La mancha flotante lucía como una persona encorvada que vestía una túnica con capucha puntiaguda. Incluso hubo quien aseguró que parecía volar sobre una escoba. Así llegaron a una primera conclusión. Tal vez aquello era una bruja.
However, the group would be very adamant to say that they did not fake this, even having 2 cops vouch for them, saying that they both, during the patrolling shifts, came face to face with the same cloaked figure in the video, with a giant pointy hood, giant black eyes, and a feathered tall statue, with even one of them claiming that the witch attacked him.
Pero no tenía nada de escoba, nada. Iba volando sola.
El oficial samaniego, quien trabaja en un municipio distinto al de su colega, contó mientras era auxiliado por paramédicos que una bruja lo había atacado.
Now, Jerónimo and his UFO group claim that although this is a witch flying humanoid creature, that this might actually be a case of an alien disguised as a witch. Which, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of believe more. I don't know what. But I mean, this whole idea of witches in Mexico isn't new, as we had a case in Chiquihuite where allegedly a guy caught witches disguised as balls of fire that suddenly just sprung up into the sky and separated and started flying all over. So do with that as you will. But do I believe in witches? I mean, yeah, I do. But do I believe that they are broom flying balls of fire? Probably not. I'm sorry, don't get mad at me. But do I believe in aliens? Yes. We can't be selfish enough to think that we're the only ones living in this giant universe, right? Right? Like, that'd be kind of dumb. What do you think? Is
They're
this real?
demons,
Is this fake?
girls.
Are these real witches that these UFO enthusiasts captured? Are they actually aliens? Or are all of these people playing in our face? Let me know.
Airplanes did not hit the Twin Towers. These are steel beams every 14 inches. An airplane basically crumbles, and then the titanium engines and wings fall to the ground. The Air Force has some very advanced holographic capabilities, and there is a known Air Force plane that was flying above the Twin Towers, which was in a position to beam a holographic image of an airplane flying into the Twin Towers. And if you'll recall, this image goes through the towers as if it's going through butter. Zip, it just disappears. That's a holographic image. That's not a real airplane. And last but not least, the CIA, under George H.W. Bush's direction and Dick Cheney, used $240 billion in offshore gold to finance a gold war to destroy the economy of Russia. And that money was laundered on 9/11. Nothing hit any of the computers, but because of 9/11, extraordinary transactions were allowed to clear, and CIA was able to launder $240 billion worth of transactions as part of the event. There was also insurance fraud in that all of the gold and jewels and other things stolen in the vaults were taken out prior to the event. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I have it on good authority that a number of people were warned to stay out of the building, and that a number of prominent people had hotel suites overlooking the Twin Towers to observe the event.
Have you heard of the Great Nonconformity, this crazy geological mystery in the Grand Canyon in Arizona? Now, this is absolutely nuts. So take a look right here. This is called Vishnu Schist, and it's one of the oldest exposed rocks we know of. Here you can see a geologist standing on top of some. And here's where it gets really weird. So this Vishnu Schist is 1.7 billion years old. And you can see right here, there's another layer of rock on top of it. Now, this is a type of sandstone that's only 500 million years old. That means 1.2 billion years of geological history is absolutely missing, and nobody can explain why. This is bizarre. So there's a lot of theories about this. Some people think just some kind of massive erosive event happened, and other scientists point to glaciers and think glaciers ripped off part of the continent. Either way, there's really no great evidence to tell us what happened. All we really know is something really violent must have happened to strip away 1.2 billion years of the Earth's history. Think of it as like taking a history book and ripping out half the pages. And I mean, we're talking about potentially hundreds of feet worth of sediment and geological history that's just gone. Love to hear in the comments what you think happened here at the Great Nonconformity. And I'm Keith. This is Keith's Trails and Treasures. Follow me for more great content just like this.
Maybe the dating methods are not very accurate.
One of the most expensive scenes in one of the most expensive and problem-filled productions ever is Elizabeth Taylor's entrance to Rome in Cleopatra. In today's money, Cleopatra's costs would total nearly $500 million, with this scene alone costing tens of millions. Everything was big on Cleopatra. Elizabeth Taylor was the first actress to receive $1 million salary, the film ran months behind schedule, and the Roman Forum set was larger than the real thing. Thousands of extras were used for this scene. Dancers, acrobats, musicians, live animals, and spectators all had to be coordinated to make this moment work. Cleopatra rides in on a 35-foot-high by 70-foot-long sphinx with a golden throne. Elizabeth is covered in gold from head to toe with an elaborate winged cape. In October of 1961, they rehearsed the scene on the set for 2 days, after months of off-set rehearsals, and Elizabeth showed up a half hour late on the first day of filming. Makeup work had started on the extras at 2 a.m. Like everything on Cleopatra, the process was tedious, and on the second day of filming, it started to rain. The rain damaged the sets, and that delayed the shoot, and when they started to film again, it started to special effects.
They have just found a galaxy with oxygen. Right. Astronomers have discovered and been looking into a galaxy called JD's GS14. And well, it's completely breaking the rules about what we thought was actually possible. This thing is 13.4 billion light years away, so you ain't going there anytime soon. But this also means that the light we're seeing when our researchers are looking at it is the light that left when it was only around 300 million years old. It sounds old until you realize the universe is over 14 billion. So this thing was created pretty much at the dawn of the universe. And as I say, because of the speed of light, we are able to see that planet in its origin, what was happening there when it was only 300 million years old. Same as if they looked at Earth, they would see dinosaurs. But this is the creepy, crazy part. They found oxygen inside this galaxy. Now, this galaxy is a cluster of all kinds of planets and things there. It's not like one planet. But this oxygen shouldn't be there, because oxygen wasn't created in and from the Big Bang. It only really appears after giant stars are born, collapse, explode, that kind of cycle repeats. But somehow, their galaxy has already reached around 10% of the oxygen that is in our own Milky Way. Imagine finding a fully built city with skyscrapers on the day that humans first existed. That's basically what it feels like for these scientists discovering this. And if we're seeing this planet 14 billion years ago, what does it look like today?
No Big Bang.
Everyone knows the legend of King Arthur's Excalibur, but most people have no idea that the real sword in the stone is hidden inside a ruthless medieval monastery. Deep in the ruins of the San Galgano Abbey in Tuscany, Italy, there is a chapel that holds a mystery unsolved for over 800 years. Inside sits a sword, buried deep within a solid block of stone. But look closer, because this isn't a movie prop. The sword belonged to Galgano Guidati, a famously violent knight who claimed to have a divine vision. In a moment of total transformation, he renounced his life of blood and war. To prove his oath, he didn't just throw his sword away. He drove it into a solid rock, turning the blade into a cross. And here is the part that defies every law of science. Cause skeptics for centuries claimed the rock was fake or the sword was just a broken piece glued to the top. But modern scientific analysis has confirmed the impossible. The rock is 100% natural stone, and the metal blade goes deep into the center of the solid mass. There are no cracks, no glue, and no signs of the rock being poured. The question is, how did a human hand push cold steel through solid mountain rock? Some believe Galgano was granted a momentary power from another realm, while others fear the sword is a seal holding something back. But what do you think? Write your opinion in the comments.
Please, someone go and pull it out.
There is a hidden underground city that's underneath Kansas City with over 10 miles of roads, a literal McDonald's, and 3,000 people who go to work there every single day. So 150 feet underneath Kansas City, Missouri, there is actually a massive underground business complex that's carved into a 270 million year old limestone mine. You probably had no idea that this was even there. And dude, it's literally called Subtropolis. There is over 10 miles of paved, fully lit roads, more than 10,000 limestone pillars, and it's so big that it could fit 42 NFL stadiums inside of it. Now this is what makes it even crazier, because over 3,000 people commute underground every single day to work at one of the 55 businesses operating down there. The US Postal Service has a facility inside, so does the National Archives, and there's a data center that's considered one of the most secure in the entire world. And the guy that built this entire thing is Lamar Hunt. He is the guy that founded the Kansas City Chiefs, and he literally came up with the name Super Bowl. He looked at a abandoned limestone mine back in the 1960s and said, yeah, let's put an entire city down here. Most people's basements would flood whenever it rains, but this guy just built a literal zip code in his.
Really makes you wonder what else they have underground that we have no idea about.
Tell me what you see when you look at this individual, and be honest, I want your first thought that pops into your head to be written in the comment section, because I'm finally breaking my silence about this man. And if you don't know who he is, he goes by the name of Dr. Stephen Greer. You'll see a few images popping up on the screen, different ones, and the expressions he's pulling. And he has been renowned for speaking about the UFO and UAP topic, stick with me, for decades now, and is convinced that we are not alone, and that 20-30% of unidentified objects that we see right now aren't ours, yet the other 60-70% are the Lockheed Martins, United States, or military around the world. Stephen, it's got to be said, and I won't be the first and last person to say this, you are the most reptilian looking person that I have ever seen in my life. Some of these images even back it up. Now, I probably am wrong. I haven't flipped my lid. But if you know the history of this topic, you can't help but question it and think, is something going on, lads? I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
She is not just a witch. She is an extra-dimensional parasitic being from a completely separate reality who in and of herself is half giant, half jinn, meaning genie, who destroyed all life in her home universe and was then stuck in stasis before escaping into Narnia at the moment of its creation by Aslan, getting into a fight with him, thus starting their rivalry and essentially creating the entire dichotomy of good versus evil. Let's talk about Jadis, or the White Witch from the Chronicles of Narnia. So Jadis comes from an entirely different realm that's separate from Narnia and Earth that was known as Karn. And Karn was ruled over by a royal family of half giant, half jinns, and she was a member of that royal family. And they were descendants of giants and of jinn, who are essentially just sorcerers who in and of themselves were descendants of Lilith, who was Adam's first wife. And she got into a vicious war with her sister over the throne of Karn. A war in which, when her defeat seemed imminent, she used a terrible magical curse that was hidden away from the entire world that was known as the Deplorable Word. A curse which destroyed all life on Karn except her own. With nothing else to do, she then puts herself to sleep until she's accidentally awoken by Diggory Kirk and Polly Plummer during The Magician's Nephew. At which point she chases them across universes to London, where she rips a lamppost out of the ground with her bare hand. And then chases them across to Narnia at the moment of its creation by Aslan. She then tried to attack Aslan with the iron rod of the lamppost, but it bounced off of his head and landed in the ground, where it
I like this movie, Narnia.
Grew, as the whole universe did, into the lamppost from the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. She then fled north and consumed an apple of immortality before returning and conquering Narnia almost a century later and establishing an eternal winter but never Christmas. Until, of course, the events of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
You would hope you were inside the fireball, because the further out you are, the worse it is. The mushroom cloud that we've all seen. That mushroom stem and the cloud is made up of the remnants of people who have turned into combusting carbon. That is the detritus of civilization. Every nuclear weapon is really a mass extinction weapon. Because all these fires have started now from the flash, the situation becomes a mesocyclone of fire, is how it's described. In a matter of minutes or hours, there will be 100-mile radius of fire because there's no first responders in a nuclear attack. After a nuclear strike, there is no population protection planning because everyone will be dead. You're on your own.
To understand ghost murmur, you have to look at the physics of the human body. Every single time your heart beats, your muscles depolarize, generating a faint electromagnetic field. Normally, a doctor has to place sensors directly onto your bare chest just to read it. Ghost murmur takes that concept and scales it up to a battlefield level using long-range quantum magnetometry. The core of the system relies on microscopic, engineered defects inside synthetic diamonds known as metrogen vacancy centers. At the quantum level, these defects are hypersensitive to even the smallest fluctuations in magnetic fields. When mounted on a helicopter, these quantum sensors cast a massive, invisible net over the landscape, registering the microscopic electromagnetic footprint of a human heart from miles away. But there is a catch. A quantum sensor is almost too good. It absorbs everything. A modern battlefield is flooded with electromagnetic...
The best attraction of medieval England was London Bridge, because the medieval London Bridge was sensational. It had 140 houses on it, some of them countless stories tall, 4 or 5, with even some houses reaching 6 stories high. It hung over both the water side and the bridge side, and so it created like this tunnel that you'd walk under as you entered the city. It had shops, anything you could find in a medieval city, butchers, blacksmiths, etc. you could find on London Bridge. It had a church. You'd have to pay a toll to walk across it, countless tolls actually, and the heads of the king's enemies would be placed on spikes at the entrance to the bridge. I mean, this is amazing, right? And, you know, the bridge was constantly sort of falling down. You know, parts of it were constantly, you know, crumbling into the River Thames. And it may be from the centuries of parts of the bridge falling down that we get the famous, you know, nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, etc. And the bridge was also constantly catching fire. And it actually caught on fire in the 1630s so bad that half the houses on the bridge were burnt down, and so when the Great Fire of London happened, it couldn't actually spread to the other houses, and so London Bridge was saved. But it would be torn down, sadly, in the 19th century and then replaced again. And this is the current London Bridge. It's dull,
boring,
and it's boring, right? Medieval London Bridge was amazing, right? I mean, just unbelievable. And yeah, hope you enjoyed.
Rebuild the real London Bridge.
A Sri Lankan made the best judgment call on ancient Rome? Let me explain. Look, meet me in the 1st century in Sri Lanka. Oh, over here. See, you might think that the ancient island of Sri Lanka is disconnected, but make no mistake, this isolated paradise was far from disconnected with Western geopolitics. Look, whenever the Roman Empire was doing its thing, under Emperor Claudius specifically, their historian Pliny the Elder records an interesting event. A Roman freedman on the Red Sea was caught in a terrible monsoon, blown across the ocean for 15 days, and made landfall at the port of Hippuri. He was then brought to the royal court of the Anuradhapura kingdom. Now the king hosted the stranger, but noticed something as he was looking at his luggage, a Roman silver denarii. Pliny records the king's reaction to seeing this denarii. Maxime admiratus, honestetem in Romanis, quod pares, pondere denari. Basically, the king was astonished by the integrity of the Roman currency system, seeing even Roman emperors and rulers who overthrew one another still had their coins having the same physical weight and silver purity, which led the Sri Lankan king to conclude the Romans were a civilization governed by an unyielding rule of law and a systemic honesty that bled through human nature, prompting him to dispatch a formal embassy of 4 ambassadors across the ancient world to Rome, specifically to establish direct trade and diplomatic alliances. Just from feeling the pocket change of a shipwrecked sailor. He would have loved sports betting.
The Devil's Dam Gate in Pasadena, California was built in 1920. It was created to control the Arroyo Seco. It's located pretty close to JPL. Often dubbed as the portal to hell, the Arroyo Seco Dam is surrounded by occult history. It even features a rock formation that may look like the devil. Jack Parsons, who was a co-founder to JPL and a pioneer of rocket fuel, believed that the Devil's Gate Dam was a portal to hell. Parsons believed that the area held immense magical power. In the 1940s, Jack Parsons linked up with L. Ron Hubbard to perform rituals at the dam. They wanted to summon otherworldly spirits. He noted it as a thin spot between dimensions, ultimately a portal. The spot is also linked to many stories of demons, children that went missing in the 50s and the 60s, and many ghostly occurrences. Spooky.
Charles Manson wasn't just this crazy guy. He was actually one of the test subjects in Project MK Ultra.
Yep.
Because a lot of people always wonder, how did him and the
surprised.
Manson family just go from being these regular hippies to like these psycho killers, right? This doctor, Lewis West, he actually was one of the people that worked for the MK Ultra project. He started running a test in San Francisco where it was to see the use of certain drugs like psychedelics and things like that and cult dynamics. And that's what that guy was in San Francisco studying. The same time Charles Manson was out there before he ends up moving to LA.
Yeah.
On top of that, there's like all these documents that are saying Charles Manson was a part of the projects. He was one of the people that were being tested on, and they even go as far as to say he was helping the doctors like still do these projects around the same time when he went to go commit these murders.
Really?
Yes, and this is supposedly documented. And also this doctor in San Francisco, he had a free health clinic at the time that Charles Manson and all of his followers would use frequently as well. So their connections were so much, it was insane.
Yeah.
And then there was also this weird ass thing of there was somebody that worked with that doctor as well. They actually stayed in Charles Manson's ranch,
Spawn Ranch,
bro, for like 4 months.
Really?
And they stayed there amongst all of the other followers, and they were there for 4 months doing drugs with them, all of the stuff that they were doing, and then went back and just reported all this stuff to these people at MK Ultra.
So like the whole time he was still doing the MK Ultra shit,
Pretty
while
much.
he was with his cult and everything.
Yes.
So like the whole thing was planned from
So
the
the
beginning.
whole thing was planned from the jump, according to these documents.
That's insane.
The best camera specs on any living organism belong to the mantis shrimp. For starters, the shrimp has 16 types of photoreceptors, and you have only 3, red, green, and blue. The best multispectral cameras that NASA puts on its satellites have only 10 to 12 bands, but the shrimp has 16. But it gets crazier. Each eye is split into 3 individual sections that all focus on the same point, giving it trinocular vision in a single eye. In order for us to perceive depth, we need 2 sources of visual data, which is why we have 2 eyes and which is why stereoscopic 3D cameras have 2 lenses. But the mantis shrimp perceives depth with trinocular vision in each eye. And each eye moves independently, so it has nearly 300-degree spatial awareness at all times. In camera terms, that's 2 independently gimbalized cameras with built-in depth sensing, ultraviolet detection, and 6-channel polarization analysis happening at the same time. But wait, the shrimp's brain is only the size of a grain of rice. So how is it processing 16 channels of color data plus 6 channels of polarization data from 2 independently moving eyes? It's not. Researchers at the University of Queensland actually discovered that the mantis shrimp offloads visual processing to the eyes themselves. Basically, it's edge computing. Instead of sending all of that raw data back to a central processor, the mantis shrimp is processing it locally at the sensor level. It's the same principle in autonomous vehicles or on-device AI chips, where you process the data locally in order for it to react faster. Engineers spent decades figuring that out, but this shrimp has been doing it for 500 million years.
These are the top 5 worst geographically placed cities in America. Number 5, San Francisco. So the reason that this one is number 5 is because of a couple of things. So first, because it's actually placed directly on top of the San Andreas fault line, which is one of the strongest faults in all of the world and is capable of producing earthquakes that would level any city on this planet. Also, because it's placed on such a tight peninsula, it makes expansion impossible. So San Francisco is as large as it's ever ever gonna get. The only way it could grow is to grow up. Number 4, Miami. Most of the city barely sits above sea level, and then on top of that, it doesn't matter what they do. It is literally made of a substance that is like a sponge. So any water that is around the city gets soaked up by the ground that it's underneath. And so flooding is always happening in Miami. So they predict that in the next 50 to 100 years, Miami will be completely underwater. There's even plans right now to preserve parts of the city and have it as an underwater like museum, basically. Number 3, Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona is on this list. I think it's probably the most obvious of all so far because it literally sits within the desert and summers get up to sometimes 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's almost unlivable. And you think about how were people living in Phoenix in the 1800s and 1700s, and the answer is not very many people were. You ask why did people ever choose to live in Phoenix? It's because it was a good like middle point between going west and the east. Number 2, Las Vegas, Nevada. Just like Phoenix, this is another one, another desert where summers get up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The thing that makes it a little bit worse than Phoenix is there's no natural water sources. Back in the day, there were natural springs. Now Vegas completely depends on the Colorado River, but guess what else depends on the Colorado River? Los Angeles, Denver.
So what happens when that dries up?
The Colorado River is almost completely dried up. Within the next 20 to 30 years, Vegas is not going to be a place where people can live anymore. And number 1, New Orleans. New Orleans is number 1, and it is known around the world as being the single worst example of human infrastructure ever. And it's because of one very simple reason. The entire city of New Orleans is under sea level, and it's surrounded by water on all sides. On one side, it's surrounded by Lake Pontchartrain. On the other side, it's surrounded by the Mississippi River. And then on the other side is the Gulf of Mexico. It's a bowl. Any inconvenience whatsoever, and the city is flooding. What makes it even worse, it's sinking 2 inches a year. So there is a realistic chance that within the next 20 to 30 years, New Orleans ceased to exist anymore, and all of the residents are forced to move inland.
This man was able to see that Jupiter has rings before NASA had ever proven it, and he did so with something called remote viewing. His name is Ingo Swann, and he claimed to be able to mentally travel to pretty much any location. Well, the Stanford Research Institute began running experiments on Ingo, giving him random coordinates around the world, and in turn, he was able to describe the landscape of each place with precision, despite physically being inside of a research room. Eventually, the CIA caught on, and that's when they formed Project Stargate. Project Stargate was an operation that was funded by the CIA during the Cold War, with the goal to gather information about enemies using these so-called psychic abilities. Ingo actually began training others to use remote viewing as well to help locate weapons in the Soviet Union. During these sessions, other remote viewers were able to locate deep underground chambers, long tunnel systems, and large cylinder-shaped objects that were interpreted as missiles. But what was really interesting about Ingo and his abilities is that he was able to remotely view places beyond our world too. In fact, he was able to describe faint rings around Jupiter and intense atmospheric activity like giant lightning storms. He also said there were mountains on one of Jupiter's moons. 6 years later, Voyager 1 launched and made the closest pass by Jupiter ever achieved at the time, collecting data along the way that had remained unknown until then. And when scientists got that data back, they were shocked that all of Ingo's observations were correct. Jupiter did in fact have faint rings around it, a giant storm called the Great Red Spot, and large mountainous volcanoes on its moon, Io.
Sounds like Stranger Things experiment. Alright, thanks for staying till the end. I hope you like my lineup. Don't forget to subscribe, likes, hype, and hit that bell notification button so you won't miss my next video. Have a wonderful day, and always, God bless.